8th is a holiday, May 21st is a holiday, and then the 1st of June is a holiday. So we have a lot of holidays in this month.
So we had some holidays in May, and we're gonna do this called walk through. It's a wall through. Lee's gonna explain it anyway.
So the Mauerweg is this long, it's like 122 or 150, something like that, kilometer trail that traces the path of the Berlin Wall where it was.
I think it's gonna be pretty fun. I'm not sure.
Today we're gonna start here. So this is actually an avenue of cherry blossom trees, but we're a little bit too late in the month. You can see they're all over the ground and not on the actual trees themselves, but still, it's very pretty.
So I think this is there used to be a wall.
Yeah. So when they first announced the loosening of the travel restrictions, this was one of the checkpoints that people rushed to try and get through as soon as it was announced on November 1989.
I like how actually they use like the buildings walls to actually showcase. That's pretty
clever.
Yeah, that was pretty clever. This is the border wall?
This was the border wall. That's what these are signifying. You're in West Berlin and I'm in East Berlin. So from here, all the way until the postcard was an empty, the thing that we pointed out is the guard. This was like no man's land, right? And then there's the guard tunnel. So you wouldn't have actually been able
way
to get
over
this
there.
close. And in the 80s, they erected a signal fence. And the signal fence was to catch refugees. So people that were trying to escape, they would touch it, and then a light would go off at the top, signaling to the watchtowers where the fence had been touched. But there was no alarm, so people that were trying to escape wouldn't know where they'd been touched.
When you think about it, there was a lot of gap between the wall. I mean, wall itself wasn't just one wall. There was dead area that people were like, even buildings couldn't exist, and there was a watchtower, and then that was some parts had death zones, and like it wasn't just a one single wall.
The area around Bernauer Straße does a really good job of showing just how big the gap between the inner and the outer wall was, and what other sorts of escape measures were put in place. You get to see a bunch of the tunnels that went through. They had ruins from houses that got boarded up because they were too close to the border. They have lots of information about people that lived their life literally on the border between East and West Germany before the wall was built, and then what it was like after the wall was built. So that's probably the best historical and most informative section of the whole path. And they didn't just preserve the wall, they preserved all the inner stuff. So there's a watchtower, there's the signal fence, there's the patrol road, there's everything.
Oh, really? This is actually a wall?
This is actually the wall. The preserved section.
No art, just wall.
Just wall.
People think about Berlin Wall, of course, like the art installations.
Sure, East Side Gallery.
East Side Gallery. But there's other walls that it's equally important and preserved as it is. So I think this one is my best so far, I feel.
Yeah.
But what do I know? We're in only checkpoint 2.
I know. This is inner wall. So it's kind of nice they've done this. So we're done. This marks the official end of section 2. So far, what do you think?
It's been pretty good.
Yeah, it has been pretty good.
Yeah.
Better than I expected.
Better than I expected.
I was actually surprised at how it was integrated into the city, because I've maybe have passed so many times of one street that was actually that had the marks in the wall. It was I'd never noticed until I actually wanted to see it. So that was really nice, because if you're seeing always flags all over, it also is disturbing in a viewpoint if you're living everyday ordinary days, because some photos were literally in somebody's building, and some like the flags were like beside one person's like home. So I think it was well done in that part of sense.
There's a lot of remembrance all around the city. Berlin and Germany has this incredibly long, detailed history. So of course there's going to be lots of stuff to have memorials and monuments and plaques and, you know, remembrances to. But it's a lot. And so they've done a very good job at making some of it, you know, very subtle and out of the way, but at the same time, a lot of it is like dark tourism, and then people are like living side by side these like really dark reminders of the past. And it's very heavy and difficult and also complicated.
We're in Nordbanhof, and then we're going to start today's walk from here.
The subway stations were pre-existing. They've literally just walled it up down here too.
Yeah, prevent escapes to the west. People began searching for other ways to get out. So underground, like subway, so they just literally, I think this is also, it's like kind of in the meeting at the border.
Here's the truth though. It's extremely overwhelming to actually stop and read every signpost. We skip a lot of them. Today is a holiday only in Berlin and only for this year. And elsewhere in Europe they call it WWII Day, which is the day that the Axis powers surrendered in the end of World War II, so it marks the end of World War II.
It's kind of a start of a new suffering and an end of a different suffering. And
the beginning of the history of the wall.
exactly, and walking the wall, I think it's kind of a nice way to learn about it, kind of understand how it is. I think it's a good way to spend your holiday. You know?
I think we're at the graveyard now.
It's the graveyard, I think so. Is that the wall?
I think so. One thing I did not expect was that it would be so very difficult to be able to tell what was actual wall and what was not actual wall.
Huh? Is this the wall? Right? Is this the wall? Are you sure you know where you're going?
No.
Okay. Maybe it's that, right? Do you think this is the wall that survived?
I do.
Look at that.
Do you?
I think so. Not sure. It's not like really guided really well. Some bad graffiti here.
And there's tons of graffiti all over it, which makes it just look like regular concrete walls that are put up all over Berlin. So it's surprisingly difficult to tell what is wall and what is not wall.
I see it.
There it is. Shall we?
Yep. So we are out of the cemetery, but we're still in a park. How many green spaces do they have here, man?
Millions. It's the river.
Literally in a residence, like literally it's like, there's
Somebody's living room literally looks out into a watchtower and a memorial to the first man shot and killed trying to escape to West Germany.
too much.
It's just too much. I don't know if I'd want to look at that every day. How was it? How was your walk today?
That was pretty good. It was good weather. Saw some
Glorious
things.
weather. Saw some things. I'm done now. Let's bail.
Yep.
So we started at Bornholmer Straße, and then we went beep, 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 and then we started here, today, and then we're going boop, 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 boop. And then we're gonna do next time the Checkpoint Charlie section. Then we're gonna do the Neukölln section.
Cool.
Still quite a bit.
We are gonna call it a day.
We are. It's not like I liked any one particular section of the wall a lot. I thought it was just generally really interesting to walk through the main part of the city center. Berlin is actually a lot geographically smaller than I expected. Like the distance between subway stations isn't that big. So it was kind of nice to be able to like go through all these neighborhoods that I haven't spent very much time around.
It was very helpful to understand Berlin as a city. Because when I pinpoint to Berlin, I don't really have a specific much knowledge about it, and it was good to know while reading the Mauerweg history and the bits and pieces of the area. It helped me to kind of understand and look at the city a little bit differently. So in a way, I really enjoyed it.
Last time we came down here from the Spree River, and now we're gonna start from here. This is by far the fewest people I've ever seen out. The entire bus is empty. We've come here to get shots before in the winter times, and then earlier in the spring, and now that it's May, this is like the emptiest I've ever seen this area.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this section of the Mauerweg has a lot of actual like sites that you pass. You pass the Reichstag, pass the Spree, pass the Brandenburger Tor, pass the Memorial to the Fallen Jews of Europe. You can still manage to see a lot of the like stuff that you normally want to see in Berlin if you just follow the path of the wall. There it is, the Brandenburger Tor.
You might have seen it in multiple of our Year in Berlin openings. It's pretty symbolic for Berlin, as well as it kind of represents the unity and peace of European Union.
The wall actually goes behind it. So I guess this section was the death strip.
The dots are where we are.
Yeah, so we're here.
That's where
Down. It's 160 meters of just like watchtowers and guard dogs and tripwires and all kinds of like anti-escape things.
Yeah. In Seoul as well, in the inner, like a really central Seoul, there's also a Berlin Wall that Germany gave as a gift of hopes of unification.
I think it's a very unique situation. Germany has succeeded to unify, and Korea hasn't yet to be unified, and it is very, I think it has a very big impact on a society and its country. It's a very unique place to visit. That's why I think it's a good walk or tour you should be able to do. You should do, I would say. Besides the trail itself, besides these little cobblestones on the ground, there's no like really big distinction between the sides of Berlin, and that in and of itself makes it impossible not to think of Korea while you're doing this walk, and to have a little bit of hope that other countries that were also divided at the end of World War II, that also kind of suffered the same fate of division, maybe can reintegrate in the way that Germany has.
There's a lot of sections like this where the wall just like dead ends into a building, but if you're diligent, you'll find it again. It just comes out of the building eventually. So you follow this, boom, actual sections of the wall.
Where are we?
Checkpoint Charlie! So right now we're in East Germany, and then the other side is the American side, Kreuzberg. So there's a sign, and then they put up what it would look like, because we would be facing American guards now. So that's an American guard on this side, and if you walk on the other side, you'd be facing a Russian guard. Or not Russian, I shouldn't say Russian, I should say Soviet guard.
on the eastern side, they, being communist, had like one type of car that they made, the Trabi. They still exist, and this is Trabi World right here. And they do, I think, city tours in Trabis, if you want to go see them.
There's a Trabi museum.
It's kind of an icon.
Is
Like
it?
the VW Bug, it's kind of an icon. Come on, there's a museum for it, come on.
On side of the wall, right?
Yep, right alongside
In the wall.
It started raining. We're gonna end the walk today here. We're gonna run to the subway station before we get totally poured on.
I did know about the history about East and West and the Berlin Wall, but it was more of a vague, figurative kind of way, and I really didn't know post the wall and before the wall.
A lot of the details about how the division affected individual parts was really new to me. And so that was kind of fun, because it's not like a history class where you sit there and try and digest it all at once. Because we did it over a couple different weekends, it was sort of a little piece at a time, and that was kind of a very nice way to go about it, I think.
Today we're starting our walk here, the place we left off before.
Let's go.
Today we're kind of going to a different area where it's like a southeast side, which is Kreuzberg of Friedrichshain.
Originally when they divided up Berlin, this section was the American exclave.
America!
And now it's like Kreuzberg and Neukölln are like some of the hippest neighborhoods.
What is the hippest?
Happening. So the wall would have been up here, and we would have been looking over into the TV tower. And there was the church over here.
I would say most interesting part, this church, there was one church that was divided into, actually it was in between the West and East, and after 30 years it was so much of a difference, they couldn't actually unite, and they had to like divide up into two churches.
Susie, can you tell which one is from East Germany and which one is from West Germany?
West. And the white block there is east. Just guessing though, just guessing.
It still lingers around like now in Berlin. A lot of infrastructures, and I bet there's a lot of policies still trying to mend and merge.
So in Luschendam here, the border ran along the property line. The houses belonged to West Berlin, but the pavement was in the Soviet sector. So basically, like the building was the West Berlin, but the pavement was like East Berlin. One of the interesting parts that actually the separation created another separation in the church, and they didn't really have a common ground. Which is a human thing, you know. The physical thing definitely affected like the
Emotional and spiritual thing.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's why it's so hard to heal a city.
Exactly, it's very hard.
We went to go shoot some footage in the winter, and we looked at like the church.
Oof.
But we didn't realize that there was an eastern and a western one, and we didn't realize that like the big fancy beautiful like park with like a tunnel and a paddling pool with ducks and stuff looked totally different in the winter. It just looked like dreary and dead and awful. And then coming back now in the springtime when everything is green, I guess summer, it was a really different experience, and I had totally written off Kreuzberg because we had gone so many times when it was like dismal and nobody was out and the weather wasn't very good. But going back this time felt really different. I'm very surprised at how different everything looks in the spring, or I guess the summer now. I mean, Kreuzberg is literally just like a different neighborhood. No? It feels totally different. I've ever seen it.
It is the emptiest I've ever seen. There was no people huddling. artists from around the world to paint the world wall, like there aren't for peace.
Some pieces got graffitied, and the artist came, I think, was it 2009, and touched up. So a lot of these have been touched up and redone. So 1990 is when they did this, and then in 2009 is when they touched it up. How many times have we been to the East Side Gallery now?
Numerous time. In every season.
The most famous wall is like the East Gallery, and it's famous for its wall of arts, but I think the other parts were much more interesting, to be honest. The wall of arts is bad. Sometimes I don't really think it's like representing this reunification, or sometimes I feel like it's bad art, so I feel it's like not good. So other parts have better context, and they were really, you know, you actually can touch it, you know, so it was pretty cool.
So we're coming up to the end of the East Side Gallery. I think this is probably all we're going to do in the Mauer Wall
Today.
for today.
Yeah. We're ending here.
I think it's the end of May. We're ending here. No.
Ending here.
I was mostly interested in doing the Mauerweg walk because I felt like up until now, all I have done is just live in my apartment, go to work in my little studio space, and try and get things repaired in my house. I don't feel like I've really gotten a chance to see any of the city or experience what it means to live here. And so I was hoping that even though everything is closed, taking a walk through a bunch of the different neighborhoods would at least give me another layer of understanding. And while it was interesting and it was fun, I can't say that it really accomplished that goal. I can't say that I feel like I know what it means to live in Berlin any better than before we started.
I don't know, I feel like still haven't seen going to places. It wasn't really going to places and experiencing like culture. It was basically seeing a monument after monument after monument. So do I really can say I saw a city? You know, I saw part of a history, but along the way I didn't stop for any like significant like shops or like museum, because it's always all closed, of course, but I haven't really see other stuff around the area, so I can't not say I saw the city. I lost my keys. I think I found my keys!
They say it's not, but I'm pretty sure it's mine.
It's like German bureaucracy in action.
So we just started smelling a little bit of gas.
In 30 minutes.
Okay.
Hello. Hello. My tax monies.
Ooh. This is what I'm looking for. We'll come back for sure.